Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for, what day is this? Wednesday, August the 11th of 2021. I would like to call the meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Members are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. Members may submit another request to speak if they require more time to ask questions or make comments. Please note that quorum is present. Regrets were received from Councillor Pauls due to personal business, and Councillor Whitehead is absent on an approved leave of absence. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have a few changes to the agenda. We have 3 added delegation requests, all respecting item 10.1 on the agenda, which is the commercial e-scooters operations report. We have James Kemp from the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities, Chris Schaefer from Bird Canada, and Ashley Brown from Spin Mobility Inc. We also have a revised motion, item 11.1, which is the installation of traffic calming measures at various locations throughout Ward 6. And those are the changes.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, may I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. And the vote will be on the screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Nan, please. Perfect, I see the thumbs up. Thank you very much. The vote carries unanimously 7-0.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, July the 7th, 2021. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve those minutes? Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by, Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, will require an electronic vote. And the vote is on the
And through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 7-0.
Thank you. We don't have any communications, so we're on to item number 6, delegation request. 6.1 is delegation request respecting item 10.1, which is commercial e-scooter operations. We have 6.1A, B, and C. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the delegation request listed? Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Marula. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, the vote's on the screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. Consent items. 7.1, COVID Wastewater Surveillance Initiative. Report PW 21048. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Moved by Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Is there any discussion? Councillor Danko?
Just reading this report, it's some quite groundbreaking research that's been facilitated with our Hamilton Water Department. I was wondering through you, Madam Chair, if I could just ask staff to give a brief overview of the work that they've been doing to support this research.
Andrew, are you here, or is there someone else who would be better?
Through the chair, yes, I am here. So Andrew Grice, Director of Hamilton Water. Certainly happy to talk a little bit about this, and it's certainly not just the work of Hamilton Water. Our colleagues in public health have been very supportive of this initiative as well. But early days in the pandemic, we did seek to work with researchers at the University of Ottawa, as well as agencies like the Canadian Water Network, to collect samples at our Woodward wastewater plant to sample them and analyze them for COVID detection in our wastewater stream. We then kind of even moved that further and started looking out into our sewer system, checking out in terms of long-term care homes as well as other neighborhoods to get even more visibility into how this research could be used in the future. The numbers do show a fairly strong correlation to the number of cases in Hamilton, but they do have some variance in them, and that is due to the research nature of this project. But certainly something that we are very proud of. We were early adopters, as you mentioned, Councillor, along with Peel, York, and Ottawa. I think we were kind of first to jump on this. So certainly very happy of the work that we've done, and certainly with our partners at the University of Ottawa, and really thanks to Dr. Harvey for his support. We know he's been very, very busy the last year and a half with everything COVID related, and he makes a lot of time for us to support us through this program. So that's really an overview of the initiative. Certainly as the pandemic seems to be coming to an end, we continue to sample because there is some value in this research and it could help guide things in the future. So we'll continue for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, are you done?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Danko, yes. Any further discussion? I don't see any. And so we will move to the vote, and we are voting to receive.
And through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item 7.2, the Old Dundas Sewage Pumping Station Emergency Overflow to Ancaster Creek Feasibility Study. It's report PW 14107A. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Danko. Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I've had many a meeting out on site with Mark Brainbridge and other water staff and the consultant on this issue, is whether or not we put an emergency overflow from the pumping station into Ancaster Creek. We had a catastrophic failure down there a few years ago, and I know Mark and I visited some of the homes, and one in particular, right on the old Ancaster Road. I guess that's called the Old Dundas Road through there near Montgomery. There were a couple of doctors, a husband and wife that lived there, and they took us into their basement, and you could only get about a third of the way down because a nice finished basement was filled with sewage. And because they had a major storm and the pumps couldn't keep up and they backed into the home, and you don't even want to think about what the damage it did to it. And they weren't alone. There was other homes in that area. And so most of them have, I believe, have put in backwater valves. That's what we told them they should do, and the city covers that cost if they get the 3 quotes and apply. But I'm just worried about another one. And because what staff are saying is we don't put an overflow pipe in. And they have done a lot of work. They put a major storage tank right in Montgomery that will hold thousands of liters. But at the end of the day, if those pumps fail, or if there's an endless storm and the pumps can't keep up and the tank fills up, it'll be backing in the basements again that are unprotected. And so, you know, my concern is that, and I asked staff, why shouldn't we have a final redundancy when it's a major storm or a major failure that it does overflow into the creek rather than fill people's basements with sewage? But the answer was they couldn't support that because the Ministry of Environment can't support it. So in effect, what we're saying is we want to fill the homes' basements with sewage first, let it run through the windows, then go into Ancaster Creek, because Ancaster Creek's right there beside it. And from, I think all of you would agree, from a practical perspective, that doesn't make sense. But the recommendation here today is that they not proceed with doing an ultimate redundancy and overflow pipe into Ancaster Creek if everything else fails. And I have trouble with that. So I think this is just an information report, Madam Chairman, so I will be opposing this.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers on this? Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And sorry, I'm just toggling back and forth in the report. Is there someone from staff that can just give a quick overview? I mean, I'm assuming Councillor Ferguson on his comments, and I certainly understand where he's coming from, that the ministry, would we be contravening legislation or regulations at the ministerial level? Is that why we're not supportive of this?
Andrew
I think it's Mark Brainbridge would be the right person.
or Mark?
Good afternoon. Thank you through the chair. This is Mark Bainbridge. I'm the Director of Planning and Capital, and I do recall the visits that the councillor and I had, and we certainly don't want to see our residents in these situations in the future. We have done quite a bit of work in this area, and as the councillor pointed out, we have put in structural or capital works to improve the level of service for these homes along Old Dundas Road. We feel that the monitoring of that area has shown a significant improvement in level of service. And there's no way to accommodate every situation that Mother Nature might be able to throw at us, but we do have a significant level of service in that particular area. The regulatory challenges are there's indicators of regulatory challenges, but to the councillor's question, it would be an application to the regulator to request permission for their permits. We're expecting that would be significantly challenged and or rejected, but it is something that we could go and actively test with our regulator. We just see lots of current dialogue with our regulator that is suggesting that this is not in line with their vision for protection of the environment. And so our conclusions are really drawn on the basis that we have a very high level of service in this area now, and we continue to improve upon that with some remaining pieces of our formula moving forward. So I think if that gives enough of an overview, hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
It does to a point. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I guess I'm concerned. I know you've said you've taken a number of actions to mitigate this happening again in the future, and recommending backflow preventers. But how far out from this particular area are we encouraging residents to get backflow preventers? Because I could be here, but upstream there's 3 other people other homes that don't have them that now could be flooded out. So we're only shifting the problem. I said that way back when we dealt with backflow preventers. Yes, they're great, but it does shift a problem. So I'm just concerned. And when we are looking at is this an area that we need to look at combined sewer overflow or an overflow service system?
So through the chair, this is technically a separated sewer system, so it is fundamentally different from what you're used to hearing conversations about the combined sewer system. So it is different in that way. And yes, while the backflow devices are things that we recommend are employed by residents and the programs that we provide to support them, but we've done a lot more than that. The recipe includes the capital that the councillor referred to, which is essentially a storage tank, not unlike the tanks that we put in place downtown for the sort of a similar strategy. In addition to that, we've done some I&I work in the public side of our system, which is our city sewers, to reduce the amount of inflow through cracking and weaknesses in the old pipes. And we are right now moving towards sort of public engagement to start looking at removal of downspouts that are connected and all the inflow that comes from private properties. And with all those things put in place, we feel that we have a very significant level of service. However, to the councillor's point, to the ward councillor's point, there's always a bigger storm that we could encounter.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate all those comments. I will leave it to Councillor Ferguson if he wishes to put something forward to initiate. But I certainly appreciate you've answered the next couple of questions I had, and that was storm eave trough, downspouts disconnection, and all those good things that certainly make a huge difference. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Any further first-time speakers? Councillor Ferguson for a second time. I can't hear you, Councillor Ferguson. I can see your mouth working, but I can't hear you.
A lot of people might celebrate that.
Oh, not us.
And so I want to first publicly thank Mark. Him and his staff have worked hard to try to find a solution to this. But at the end of the day, the public are not protected. And we've been, in the 15 years I've been around, we've been doing smoke tests and trying to fix cross connections and disconnect these troughs, and that'll be ongoing for quite some time. That's the same problem we got with Shadow Creek. And what worries me is that a bureaucrat in Toronto is going to make this decision. And he or she may live on the 25th floor of a condo in downtown Toronto and not personally at any risk of this sort of thing. And so I'm sitting there thinking about it. And if my colleagues feel uncomfortable with this, I understand, but I wonder whether we shouldn't pass a motion that staff write or make an application for a stormwater overflow and let the province turn us down. Because then I have a safety valve, a political safety valve, I guess. I mean, I still like to see the overflow pipe it in, but if they're going to turn us down, let's let them turn us down, and then we can go public with that to show that we at least tried. And so if you think that's appropriate, Madam Chairman, I'd like to move that.
And so, Councillor, so rather than the recommendation to receive the report, we would be giving direction to staff.
Yeah, staff be directed to apply to the ministry to install an overflow pipe for an ultimate failure.
Okay, and I did see Councillor Pearson's hand. So, Councillor, could you just clarify for me, you're willing to second that motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to second that. And I don't disagree with Councillor Ferguson because the legislation is changing constantly. And there may be something today that may change tomorrow, but at least we've taken the initiative now when the problem is front and center to us. So I will second it. Thank you.
And we are encountering, climate change, as we all hear about every day. And bigger storms could be coming, as Mark said.
Yep. Okay, and so that amendment has been moved and seconded. So on the amendment, any discussion? Don't see any. So we'll
Councillor
go to
Van der
vote.
Beek?
Excuse me. Yes.
Sorry, I don't have eScribe, or yeah, eScribe's not working, so I indicated visually on the screen here. I was wondering if Councillor Ferguson, are you able to type that up or just repeat it slowly so that clerks can type it up so it can be visible to the public before we vote? Thank you.
I can do that, certainly. I can't type because I'm a lousy typist. Anybody can
Fair
read
enough.
emails from me, you probably see it. My
Fair
big
enough.
fat farmer fingers hit two keys at the same time all the time. But
Madam Clerk,
motion,
did you get that? Did you get part of his motion?
So through you, Madam.
It's on the screen. It's on the screen that staff be directed to apply to the ministry for the installation of stormwater overflow
into Ancaster Creek.
I think that's part of the report.
It is.
Do you want that added for good measure?
Mark, what do you think?
Mark?
Sorry, through the chair. Yes, we can certainly proceed down that road of direction from council. I might point out that we have been down that road once before. In the 90s, I believe we do have some information drawn, but I think we can go back and revive that, renew that with new information that we have in the community and make that application and see what our regulator says. It's not necessarily, we don't know exactly what they'll say. We're just seeing a lot of signs along the road to expect that that'll be a bumpy road.
Thank you, Mark. Do you think that we need to add to the end of the sentence so the sentence reads, I'll just read it again, the staff be directed to apply to the ministry for the installation of stormwater overflow. Do you think that it would be helpful if that continued on to say into Ancaster Creek?
Through you, yes, I think that's prudent just to make sure that it's clear what location we're talking about. So yes, I would agree with that amendment.
Thank you. Can you, Madam Clerk, can you add that?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's done.
Good, thank you. All right, any further discussion on this amendment? Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And as Councillor Ferguson points out, in the event of a catastrophic flood that overwhelms the system, right now that overflow sewage would be flowing into people's homes, into their basements, and then into Ancaster Creek. So there's really no difference if you just overflow directly into the creek and avoid people's homes. So that makes perfect sense, I think, what we're asking for. However, if we were approved for that infrastructure, there would be a cost to that. And as we've heard from our finance and water staff, that in particular, the stormwater management system does not receive adequate funding right now as it is. So I'm just pointing out that a funding source in the event that we were approved for this would be from a stormwater management fee. Thank you.
And who can answer that? Mark?
Yes, through you, I think we can work with that. I'm not sure if there's any finance people on the call here, or Andrew, if he has any thoughts about the source of revenue, but I think that this is fundamentally a separated sewer shed, so it is technically a wastewater system overflow that we're putting in place, but I think it's because of the influence of precipitation and essentially stormwater that gets into the pipe that we're struggling with. So I think that I agree with the councillor's comments.
Thank you. Andrew?
Through the chair, Andrew Grice, Director of Hamilton Water. I certainly would agree with Councillor Danko's comments. Mark is correct, it is a separated system, but the pressures that we're feeling here are due to precipitation events. So certainly we would have to have further discussions about a funding stream and how that would stack up as we prioritize our drinking water, our wastewater, and our stormwater systems.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor?
No, that answers the question and topic of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? The vote will be on the screen then. And the vote is up.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just waiting for a vote from Councillor Collins and Councillor Marula and Councillor Farr, please.
Turns out I was in the Board of Health agenda the whole time, but I'm supportive, and I'll open up the right agenda now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Farr. I've logged your vote. Just looking for a vote from Councillor Marula now and Councillor Collins. Okay, not hearing from either of them, I'll be marking them as absent for this vote.
Okay.
That vote carries unanimously, 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're to 7.3, City of Hamilton Annual Collision Report, 2020 Statistics and Trends, PW 21047. I'd like to call upon Mike Field, Acting Director of Transportation, Operations and Maintenance, to introduce the report. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. You already introduced me, but I'm Mike Field, Acting Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. In front of you is the 2020 Annual Collision Report. It contains statistics from last year and comparisons to previous years. It is the 4th edition of the report. When you read it, I just need to highlight to you that context is really important with this one. The COVID-19 pandemic changed the way that people traveled around the city, or rather didn't travel. And motor vehicle traffic on roadways was considerably reduced, and particularly the morning and afternoon travel peaks saw about 50% less vehicles than what we're used to. There's some graphs in the report that kind of tell the story, and I encourage you to take a quick look at them. They clearly kind of tell what occurred last year. These changes are obviously not isolated to Hamilton, and they were experienced across North America, probably the world as well. The Ontario Provincial Police had some information that was out earlier this year, and they observed that the number of collisions across the province was lower, the severity of collisions or injuries was higher when they did occur, and it's assumed that speeding and careless driving were to blame as an output of the COVID-19 kind of contributions. Since the pandemic isn't over, the impacts to how people travel in the city continue to show up, and they will show up in next year's collision report as well. We won't really know the full impacts of the alterations to the traffic patterns until the pandemic has concluded and we've had a chance to look at the data. But with all that in mind, so again, the disclaimer of look at the report with that in mind. I'll just briefly touch on some of the content of the report. The best news, and really happy to report on this, it seems to be a trend over and over again. The city continues to benefit from council's prioritization of roadway safety because the number of fatal and injury collisions continues to decrease from year to year. Last year, the overall number of collisions dropped by 33%, and fatal and injury collisions dropped by 22% compared to 2019. And despite the reductions, collisions resulted in injuries more often. In 2019, 15% of collisions resulted in injuries, and last year that moved to 17%. And that kind of goes back to those observations I mentioned from the OPP, and that it relates to increases in dangerous driving. On the link, there was a reduction of collisions by 54% and a reduction of fatal and injury collisions by 83%. And then on the red hill, there was a reduction up by 41% of collisions and 60% of fatal and injury collisions. Last year, there were 13 fatalities in the city. 9 of them involved motorists and 4 pedestrians. There were no cyclist fatalities last year. And then we all know that protecting vulnerable road users is of critical importance. And collisions involving pedestrians decreased by 21%. However, cyclist collisions increased by 2%. These numbers are kind of interesting to me because I think we all observe that people have been out and about more often, walking and cycling as they kind of escape the lockdown and their homes. It's important to point out that when a pedestrian is involved in a collision, they are injured 90% of the time. And for cyclists, they are injured 78% of the time. And that speaks to why applying Vision Zero principles to all that we do in public works is so very important. And then the last kind of thing, the 2020 annual collision report contains a lot of information and is a key feature of the approved Vision Zero action plan, as it provides evidence and data that helps us to guide where our efforts need to be focused. It's interesting to note that the City of Hamilton, we are a leader in roadway safety, and we were recognized by the Transportation Association of Canada in May for that. And I'll just leave you with that we have a lot of information publicly available, including past collision reports, interactive collision statistics, and safety actions through a Vision Zero dashboard, which can be found on the city's website.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
May I please have a motion, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive this report before we put it on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Farr. And is there any discussion on the report? I don't see any, so we'll put the vote on the screen. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in it's list. I was looking for hands waving. There's a list here. So the list is Councillor Danko, then Councillor Nan, and then Councillor Jackson. I don't want any of you to be thinking that I've forgotten you. Councillor Danko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions on the report. So when I look through the statistics into some of the specific areas that have been identified as problems, on page 11 is a summary of locations of fatal collisions, and 5 out of the 13 areas are in Ward 8, with 1 pedestrian on Upper Wellington and Inverness, a motorcycle fatality at Upper James and Fennel, 2 vehicular fatal collisions on Upper James, 1 at Mohawk, 1 at Rymel, and 1 on West 5th at Brantdale. So 40% of almost 40% of the total citywide fatal collisions were in the Ward 8 area. on page 16, when I look at the road segments with the highest frequency of fatalities and injury collisions, number 3, 5, 7, and 9 are all on Upper James. So again, that's 4 out of the top 10 locations in the entire city for fatalities and injury collisions are just on Upper James itself. And then finally on page 23, pedestrian collisions, the second most dangerous intersection in the entire city is Upper James and Fennel. So my question through you, Madam Chair, is in Ward 8, we've gone through and we've done the Complete Streets survey to improve roadway safety, primarily on neighborhood roadways, and we specifically left out the main arterial roadways to be addressed, as a citywide capacity. But I think it's fairly clear from this report that there's a pretty severe need for action specifically on the Upper James corridor, and our Vision Zero principles. These are exactly the kinds of severe injuries and fatalities that we want to prioritize through Vision Zero. So my question through you to staff is, do we have a work plan for Upper James? Has it been identified as a problem area? And what actions are we going to be able to take moving forward?
Thank you. Mike?
Through the chair to the councillor, those are really excellent questions, and when those are obvious questions too when you read this report, and it highlights those locations that kind of stand out. And the natural question is, what are we doing about it? And we have a bunch of different things in place already. We have a collision countermeasure review program where we look at intersections and roadway segments and try to come up with countermeasures to try and move the needle on them appearing within the collision report as being, areas that are kind of popping up. The other thing is that we are currently undertaking a review of the roadway safety program to look for to build on the momentum that we've made so far, and to improve it even further than we have at this moment. We've also started using experimenting with video analytics for some of the worst intersections in the city, and video analytics looks at things beyond just raw collision statistics. It also looks at or captures near miss scenarios and other kinds of situations that occur within intersections that we wouldn't really see unless we had some longer term observations happening. For Upper James specifically, that is definitely something that we are looking at addressing, because you can see on that thing number 3, 5, 7, and 9 are showing up, and it's almost a long piece of that corridor itself. And while you're correct, we're looking at neighborhood kind of traffic calming and traffic safety things through the ward study. We're also focusing on looking at the corridor of Upper James and coming up with a plan on how to address that. The issues that you're seeing in here. So that is the strength and purpose of this this report, is that it brings to the forefront through statistical analysis of areas where we really need to focus our efforts on to make changes, and it's a highly valuable resource to us to like I said, to focus our efforts in.
Thank you. I've of course heard from residents anecdotally about the issues specifically on the Upper James corridor, but it is quite striking to see it laid out statistically in the report like that, and especially during as you mentioned, the COVID year when we've had reduced travel. I'm glad to hear that there's specific attention to that. And I think that's something that we'll follow up on in the future as a priority, specifically for the Ward 8 office. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nan?
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Vanderbeek. Similar to Councillor Danko in reviewing the intersection and road segments with the highest frequency of fatal and injury collisions over the 5-year average, number 1 is King Street East and Victoria Avenue South in Ward 3, and then Main Street East at Wellington, and Main Street East at Victoria Avenue. And similarly to Ward 8 scenario, we have yet to initiate our ward-wide comprehensive review as it relates to Vision Zero and complete streets, and again, focusing on neighborhood roads. So I'm glad to hear that, Director Field, that this data does inform our staff to start putting together some recommendations about how we might be able to influence and shift those statistics from a design and investment priority perspective. But if you could, in the case where for the number 1 intersection at Victoria and King, I often get questions from residents about why that might be the case. And I wanted to turn to you and say, is there anything that you, from your observation of that intersection and your review of the list, is there anything that you can speak to from a design perspective of why that might be the case?
Mike?
Through the chair to the councillor. That particular intersection is one of the ones that we ran video analytics on, specifically to try to better understand what factors are involved with the safety performance within that intersection. And that video analytics has been concluded, and we are looking at the data that it has kind of outputted to us, as well as some recommended countermeasures to try and improve the performance based on what the video analytics kind of showed us. So that's ongoing at this very moment, as well as all the other intersections that have kind of been involved in that review. So far we're pretty impressed with what that system can find and show to us, and it does definitely reveal some opportunities for enhancements within that type of intersection that just looking at the raw statistics wouldn't really reveal to us. And it kind of correlates with some of the comments we received the public, as far as, I was in the crosswalk and I almost got hit by a car, those sorts of things, or I got clipped by a car on the sidewalk. That sort of thing shows up in video analytics and wouldn't show up in traditional collision statistics. As we kind of progress the uptake of the information through that review, and devise a plan as far as what recommendations or enhancements we're going to make at those intersections, I'll most definitely reach out to you, and we can go over all of the noted improvements that we want to make at that intersection, because we don't want it to stay as number 1 on the list.
Thank you, and most certainly appreciate that from the perspective of how that intersection and the esteemed number 7 intersection are correlated and connected, right? So Victoria Avenue South at the intersection of Main Street and King Street, that's one stretch. And then the correlation and connection also to the flow of traffic to Main Street East at Wellington Shared between 2 and 1 in terms of the ward. So I appreciate that overview. Looking forward to the report on the analytics and the review of what might be done to address this 5-year trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. Councillor Jackson, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek and Acting Director Field. Thank you for the report. And by the way, to you in your new position, doing an excellent job, and to your entire team. Always appreciate the corresponding communication back and forth with my office and my constituents where your team is needed to either provide input and or support. Although it may not be embedded in this report, Chair Vanderbeek, if you just allow me a little latitude to ask about the photo radar camera pilot program. I've been a big supporter, and maybe Acting Director Field, if you'd allow me, Chair Vanderbeek, because it's all part of trying to reduce collisions and fatalities in our community and make our roadways safer. Just a question to Mike in terms of the status of the end of the pilot program, and were you still hoping to come back this fall in the next few months with the final report, with the data? And I guess then council will have a decision to make whether we want to make the program permanent or not. Chair Vanderbeek, if you allow me that, please, to the Acting Director.
I think I can do that. Mike?
Thanks. Through the chair to the councillor. That you're right. That is it's all within the realm of roadway safety, and ASC is a potential tool for us to manage, speeding on roadways, and obviously help with making our streets safer. We have at this moment plans to bring that report forward in September as the conclusion of the ASC pilot.
Very good. That's excellent. And Mike, I presume with the report and the chock full of information you'll have from the various dozen or 24 locations in the trail across the city, you'll have options then for a committee and council moving forward, please, through you, Chair Vanderbeek.
Mike?
Through the chair to the councillors, absolutely, we're going to be making recommendations within that report based on our observations and experiences conducting the pilot over 12 months.
Terrific news. That's great. And overall, again, I'm grateful for the report and the work our traffic department's doing with engaged citizens and neighborhood associations, which as my colleagues of this committee have seen later on today as well, as it seems to be increasing across our community. And I'm delighted to see that. Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you, Councillor. And that concludes the list that I have. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this? Oh, so the vote will be on the screen. It's up.
Hi there, Madam Chair. Just waiting on a vote from Councillors Marula and Ferguson, please. And I'm just looking for a vote from Councillor Marula. Thank you very much. That vote carries unanimously, 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we'll move on to 7.4 to 7.6, all of which are Hamilton Cycling Committee meeting minutes, April the 7th, May the 5th, and June the 2nd of 2021. Could I have a mover and seconder to receive these consent items? Councillor Ferguson, did you move that? I thought he was waving at me. Councillor Farr will move it. A seconder, please. Councillor Nan?
Yeah, could I just comment on them, please?
Sure you can, now that I have a mover and a seconder.
Perfect. There's a motion in the first one, the one of April the 7th, and is to change the physical barrier between the bike lane and the road. And typically in these sort of things, it's a recommendation coming in that we would refer this off to staff for a report back to us. So what are the costs and what are the safety concerns and is there any maintenance issues with it? So should this one not be sent off to staff for a report back to us rather than simply received?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. The item that Councillor Ferguson is referring to has been pulled out into a separate citizen committee report, which will be considered as item 10.2 on today's agenda.
God, you're good. Thank you.
So at this point, Councillor, we are just receiving these 3 sets of minutes. Any further discussion on that? Okay, the vote will be on the screen. And it was moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Nan.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously, 9-0.
Thank you. And on to item 9, which is public hearings and delegations. 9.1 is the proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of Pinot Crescent in Stony Creek. The report number is PW 21043. As required under the city's bylaw 14-204, a public meeting is required. Notice of this public meeting was provided and posted on the City of Hamilton's website. The notice advised that anyone whose lands are prejudicially affected may appear before the committee. The clerk has advised that no one has pre-registered to be a virtual delegate. As we do not have any members of the public registered to speak, may I have a mover and seconder to close the public meeting? Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Farr. Councillor Farr. And the vote is on the screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting for Councillor Marula, please. And and that vote carries unanimously 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you, and the public meeting is closed. On the report, may I please have a mover and seconder to put it on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Farr again. Okay, thank you. Where am I here? Are there any questions or any discussion from the committee respecting the report? I do not see any. Will require an electronic vote, and it is up, or it should be.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
We're moving on to item 9.2. Members are reminded that questions of delegations are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. The committee will receive all of the delegations together after the last presenter has completed their presentation. Item 9.2 is James Kemp Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities respecting item 10.1, which is the commercial e-scooters operations, PED 20134B. I'd like to call on James, representing that committee, to delegate. Please unmute your microphone and turn on your video. You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you,
James,
Madam Chairperson.
go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. My name is James Kemp, and I'm here representing the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities with regards to report PED 20134B and commercial rental e-scooters.
James, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could I ask you to turn your video off? There's some background noise and you're breaking up a little. I just think your voice may be clearer with your video off.
Is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
We came before you in May with serious reservations to the commercial e-scooter pilot project as it was presented in the previous report, PED 20134A. We raised a number of concerns and made our recommendations to this committee accordingly. While not all of our concerns were addressed, an effort was made to consider a number of them. The disabled community will probably never be fully supportive of e-scooter technology. It isn't designed for us, feels like an existential threat to our safe mobility, and until helmets are fully mandated by the province, we fear that they will only make more disabled people. However, we also understand that technology is always changing and we have to learn to adapt to those changes. The Acpd feel more positive about this new report and think it's a step in the right direction to make e-scooters equitable for as many people as possible. We have studied how other cities in Canada, the United States, and throughout Europe have introduced e-scooters, and they all seem to make the same assumption. If riders are educated on how to ride properly and safely, then they will follow the rules and we can leave enforcement to the companies themselves. What actually happens is after a few months, the cities realize that an enforcement arm is required to keep riders in line. For the most part, this is addressed through blitz-style enforcement drives, but some have also tried training officers to operate and incorporate e-scooters as specialized units, and these units have had measurable success. Based on this report, the Acpd can make the following suggestions in order to be helpful and increase the odds of a successful rollout. 1, this report mentions data collection. We suggest that the city collect hospital data during the same period, paying particular attention to how, where, and why people were injured from e-scooter interactions. This would help not only by giving information on e-scooter safety, but also where there are issues that need to be addressed. For example, if people are getting injured in a particular area due to poor road conditions, the city can use that data to address the issue and improve safety. Or if there's a rash of pedestrians getting hit by e-scooters in a particular area, perhaps that is an area that requires a dedicated bike lane. The city plans on designating certain park paths as acceptable e-scooter paths. We would suggest painting large images of e-scooters in high contrast on the path, something that would alert the visually impaired that they are on a path with fast-moving vehicles so they can be on their guard. Signage is not effective for some people, and even this method will not warn everyone. Urban Braille is our preferred method of alerting the visually impaired to potential danger, but we recognize that it isn't possible during a pilot project. We highly recommend that Urban Braille be incorporated if e-scooters are approved past the pilot project. Number 3, while the city cannot mandate helmet use for all riders, the Acpd would suggest that the City of Hamilton ask the province to amend the Highway Traffic Act to require helmet use at all times, as they do with motorcycles. Studies from across the world have shown that this alone would greatly reduce the number and severity of injuries. E-scooters often pitch the riders forward, causing face and mouth injuries as well. For this reason, we also suggest face or mouth guards, but recognize that this would be a personal choice. While this report asks e-scooter companies to try and address the digital divide and provide access without a smartphone, we would also suggest they look into reporting improperly parked vehicles without a phone. This could be done by a call home button that would alert home base that it needs to be picked up. When the Acpd presented in May, a councillor remarked that we didn't want to be left behind by other Canadian cities. I would offer an alternative perspective to that. We should strive to be the first city to get e-scooters right, both for the drivers and the pedestrians around them, to make this program equitable to as many people as possible. Hamilton has a history of being at the forefront of disability issues, and e-scooters should be no different. If council accepts this amended report and decides to go forward with the pilot program, the Acpd will support the changes. We would request that we be consulted periodically throughout the pilot program to address any unforeseen issues and allow us to provide suggestions for improvement. The changes in the RFP, while not perfect, are a vast improvement over the last report. I would ask that Transportation, Public Works, and Council think of us as a resource in this. We are at your disposal. We would also offer our assistance to any e-scooter company that is submitting a proposal. Please think of us as a resource during this process. We would gladly work with you to improve the safety of your vehicles. We wish to thank Brian Hollingworth, Peter Topolovic, and everyone else involved in the preparation of this report for giving our concerns and recommendations serious and sober consideration. We also wish to thank this committee for recognizing that this issue is of great concern to our community. We ask for your continued patience and understanding as we navigate this new technology. Thank you for your time and attention. James Kemp, Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you, James. And just so you know, I started your time again when you started to speak again after you turned off your video, just so you know that I didn't count your time in the time that we were discussing your video. Questions for James? Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, James. Really appreciate you taking the time to initially share the concerns and then ultimately engage and conclude with your delegation after the engagement and what you brought before us today, with a thank you to some really good staff who you obviously had some productive conversations with, Brian Hollingsworth and Peter Topolovich and others, I'm sure. Anyway, I jotted down a few of your notes, and certainly I looked in the report, and it is clear, as you said, a lot of your concerns were covered. I just have on the question on the hospital data. Did you bring that up, that idea as well, when you engaged between the May meeting where you were before us last and now with staff? And what did you hear on that? Is it something that potentially we could work on?
Through you, Madam Chairperson, to Councillor Farr. No, I didn't bring it up with them at the time. Unfortunately, the last meeting we had, I kind of injured myself during the meeting, and the meeting was cut short. But yes, I would be glad to discuss it further with anybody.
Okay, well, I hope you're okay. And then can I assume then on your other points, like painting the large images on our pathways, was also something that you didn't have a chance then to discuss between May and now?
Through you again, Madam Chairperson, Councillor Farr. No, this was just in response to the report which we just read the other day, when they were speaking about how they were going to sign the pass. That's when we discovered the concern.
I see. Okay, well, I'm at the appropriate time, I'll ask staff what we might be able to consider there. But generally speaking, James, not everything, but for the most part, you've had some satisfactory conclusions, and you feel, and it's important that you were, but you're feeling heard on this, and you appreciate that we did engage and listen.
Again, through you, Madam Chairperson, Councillor Farr, yes. Yes, we do. Again, we don't expect everything to be perfect. Everything is a compromise, just so long as we're always working towards making things better for all. And that's the important issue.
Well, I can't tell you how much I love the way it landed, and I can tell you too, at the appropriate time, and this is for you, Madam Chair, too, I will add an amendment that does actually ensure that you are updated accordingly. As you said, you are there for us, and we should take advantage of that. And hopefully we can have that commitment formally in this motion. So I'll add that amendment for sure now, and I'll look into the other stuff too. Thanks again. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That will be at the time of the report, correct, Councillor. All right. Thank you, James. I don't see anyone else looking to ask you any questions. So thank you for your presentation. If you wish, you may exit the WebEx meeting and continue to view the proceedings via the city's website or YouTube channel. We will move on to the next delegate, and we will be receiving the delegations at together after the last presenter has completed their presentation, James. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee.
Okay. Item 9.3 is Chris Schaefer, Bird Canada, respecting item 10.1, the commercial e-scooters operations. I'd like to call on Chris to delegate respecting that item, and please unmute your microphone and turn on your video. And you will have 5 minutes to present once you begin speaking, Chris, anytime.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if my presentation is visible to members of the committee?
No, it is not.
Okay, do I have to share my screen to do that?
Yes, you do. And it's up in the left-hand top.
I'll do that right now.
Or the bottom.
Please let me know.
And I can see your presentation now. Okay. I can see your screen.
Perfect. I'll begin, Chair. That's okay.
Yes, that's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Chris Schaefer. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at Bird Canada. We're a first and last kilometer micromobility sharing company, e-scooters. We are proudly Canadian owned and operated. I want to thank staff who I've worked with on this file at the City of Hamilton, and also the last presenter, James, and the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I myself had a chance to speak at their committee when they were considering this issue. And I think the presenter's right. There is an opportunity really to get things right in Hamilton. Other cities were earlier in terms of pilots. Hamilton's later in that process, and that's okay, because the staff here, to their commend them that they've really taken the opportunity to listen and make tweaks and really lead actually on a number of items I'll cover in my presentation today. So to be commended, I think. I shared some of this virtually the same thing you see in front of you via email, so you may have had a chance to see it already. Just touch on a brief few things that the staff report highlights just to provide a little bit more color. Council, as you know, already approved personal e-scooters in Hamilton. This is the commercial side. That, again, it's similar to how other cities like Mississauga and Vancouver are approaching the same issue, personal first, then commercial. So same here in Hamilton. The RFP has been recommended for commercial e-scooters. That's similar to a number of cities in Canada have followed that process. It's really a way to control the number of vendors you select in the city. And I would suggest, I'm not in a position to make recommendations necessarily, but a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee be included on the RFP or city staff that are examining potential RFPs if this moves forward in the city of Hamilton. Include one of those representatives in that evaluation process. Other cities have done that. Fees to offset impact to the bike share program. This would be a novel approach. Hamilton would be leading here again. Montreal didn't do this, although they have a bike share program as well, a Big C bike share program. I do note that they noted in their press release after a full year of having e-scooters and bike share present that there was no financial impact to their bike share program locally in Montreal. However, there is that novel approach here in Hamilton of offsetting with fees from e-scooters. So, that's a approach that we support here. Next item, shared commercial e-scooter programs operate in more than 125 cities across the US. They've been very common. They operate now in a number of cities across Canada. I've listed there a number in different stages of regulatory development right here in Ontario, including Vaughan, London, Brampton, Mississauga, and Waterloo region. Accessibility, again, I don't want to repeat what was already said. As you heard, a number of recommendations were taken into consideration. Hamilton actually is a leader here now in this space in Canada. I work with cities across Canada, and Hamilton's really leading here, and so that should be celebrated. Lock-up e-scooters, again, another lead that Hamilton is taking, particularly in cities with sufficient municipal infrastructure to support it. Usually it's the big cities or bigger cities like a Hamilton or a Toronto, a Montreal, if you like, or Vancouver. This is an ideal solution to help keep those scooters locked in appropriate permissible places. Cities like San Francisco that have this technology have noticed a marked decrease in the number of misparked scooters. So Hamilton would be the first in Canada, to their credit. Operating speed, maximum 20 kilometers and slow down zones of 10. This is a consistent across Canada, so Hamilton's adopting best practice. Parking management and enforcement. We have safe street patrols like every other company in this space does. These are uniformed staff out every day in the city addressing issues in real time, such as a misparked scooter or whatever the case might be. And there's a number of reasons cities have explored this, and I'll wrap up now just by saying encouraging mode shift and facilitating first and last kilometer travel. Last item, and that's the end of my 5 minutes, is just some headlines from various press in and around Canada about e-scooters. So thank you very much for your time. That's the end of my presentation.
I turned my mic off, sorry, while you were speaking so that I wouldn't have any background noise for you. Are there any questions for Chris? I don't see any. Chris, thank you so much for your presentation. As I said to James, if you wish, you may now exit the WebEx meeting and continue to view the proceedings via the city's website or the YouTube channel. Thank you. Item 9.4 is Ashley Brown, Spin Mobility, Inc., respecting item 10.1, the commercial e-scooters operation. I'll call upon Ashley now to unmute your microphone, turn on your video, and you will have 5 minutes to present once you start speaking. Ashley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the Public Works Committee members and staff. My name is Ashley Brown, and I am the head of government partnerships at Spin. We are a shared micromobility company and subsidiary of the Ford Motor Company. We thank you for your consideration and exploration of a commercial e-scooter pilot program in the city of Hamilton, and we fully support the recommendations provided in the staff report. At Spin, our mission is to create a world full of 15-minute cities and to bring those cities to life by moving people freely through their streets. As a recognized industry leader, we have mastered the modern micromobility system through design, operation, and marketing schemes. We operate e-scooters and e-bikes in over 100 cities throughout North America and Europe, including Edmonton and Red Deer. In partnership with Ford, it provides us with resources to move our mission forward in exciting ways. Some of the core values that we have include earn trust, do the right thing, make an impact, carry the torch, and create a better tomorrow. For us, we see a lot of these things connected to the City of Hamilton's existing climate and transportation targets. And especially in the 2016 to 2025 strategic plan, we believe commercial e-scooters can become an integral part in the broader transit ecosystem for complete trip linkages and contribute to the city's quest for healthy and safe communities. We also believe and definitely will be connecting following this meeting here today to kind of explore more ways in which we have worked with members of the disability community in some of our other markets. We believe that one person's mobility cannot be compromised by another's. So pedestrians, people living with disabilities, and seniors, we feel that they deserve to move hazard-free in their communities, and we recognize that the introduction of new mobility options really requires a multi-pronged approach to work closely with disability groups and residents to develop new technologies that meet unresolved concerns and explore how e-scooters can serve a varying mobility needs through an adaptive vehicle program, which I know that was briefly mentioned in the staff report. Looking at some of the other recommendations, we are so excited to see that the staff have recommended a locking mechanism that will require devices to be fastened to a rack or pole. The proposed operational model, as Chris previously mentioned, is going to be the first of its kind in Canada. And in our experience in having and having operated this type of operational model in both San Francisco and the city of Chicago, we have seen this technology improve the clearance of sidewalks and obstructions in the public right of way. In fact, the city of Chicago reported in their 2020 e-scooter pilot program report that lockup e-scooter provided for them a 75% reduction in the number of 311 reports made. And so I think that there is some success that we're seeing in this particular model that can be some really strong learnings for the city of Hamilton. We also really love to see that the recommendation's been made to provide operating offset to support the bike share program. We have worked really closely in places where there are existing bike share programs with our bike share operators in markets so that we can get strategic about how we can provide a cross collaboration of services, whether we are opening our services up to people who might qualify for reduced fare programs and other ways that we can get at the equity issue. And so we really think that that's a brilliant approach, and we definitely support that. In our experience, for us, we find that safe and successful commercial e-scooter programs are tied to strong teams that provide on-the-ground support. And so we attribute a lot of that success by having an employee-based operations team. Spin is one of very few companies that does not outsource our labor to supplement our services. And so we believe in in-house employees in every city where we operate, because hiring local employees with fair wages and proper benefits shows a clear commitment to the city and provides that stability that communities need. As you look towards the future and some of the other considerations that we want to put before you today, especially as you're looking towards the RFP framework, is number one, require vendors to hire permanent in-house employees with fair wages and prohibit the use of independent contractors to support local operations. Number two, require bidding providers to demonstrate how lockup e-scooters and their technology actually functions before executing an agreement. Sometimes once agreements are executed and the technology is now made available, that sometimes the technology, sometimes cities see that technology doesn't always work as advertised. And so, for example, the city of Ottawa used equipment demonstrations as a formal stage in their RFP evaluation process. Number three, develop expectations for launching timelines and minimum fleet deployments for selected providers to ensure that commercial e-scooters are made available for community members and visitors on a timely basis. And finally, align evaluation areas of the RFP as stated on pages 10 through 12 in the employee staff report with a scoring grid, so that you're kind of attaching where your priorities are to your scoring metrics, and if possible, include that scoring rubric with the RFP document so that operators like us know where you're placing a lot of your priorities and where you really want us to focus in on. And so in closing, we believe commercial e-scooters bring communities together, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ashley. Questions for Ashley? I don't see any. Ashley, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. If you wish, you may now exit this WebEx meeting and continue to view the proceedings on the city's website or our YouTube channel. Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder to receive all of the delegations? I'm not seeing one, but that might be my computer. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Nan. And we will require an electronic vote, and be on your screen now.
For you, Madam Chair, just waiting for a vote from Councillor Marula, please. Okay, not hearing or seeing anything, I'll be marking Councillor Marula as absent for this vote.
Okay.
And that vote carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. And moving on to discussion items, which is item 10. 10.1 is commercial e-scooter operations, PED 20134B. May I call upon Brian Hollingsworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking, to introduce this report. Brian?
Good afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Certainly can.
All right. My name is Brian Hollingworth. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning and Parking, and I'm here with Peter Topolovic, Program Manager, Sustainable Mobility. Given the significance of this topic, with the will of the committee, I thought I would just verbally reintroduce this report on commercial e-scooters. You've also heard from the delegates of some of the changes, but I thought it's appropriate that committee hears from staff. Just as a recap, the report was originally presented to committee on May 3rd, 2021. The purpose of the report is to outline a framework to permit commercial e-scooters in the city of Hamilton. As noted previously, Council has already approved the operation of and rules around personal e-scooters, so they are permitted now, and this really represents the next step towards introducing this form of micromobility. Back in May, the committee referred the report back to staff to undertake further engagement and receive input from specific stakeholder groups, including the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities and the Seniors Advisory Committee. This work was completed, as you've now heard, and we're bringing this report back for consideration by the committee. The feedback from the consultations was very useful to us, and I think it was worth taking the time to further engage on what is really a significant decision for the city. In terms of input, the Seniors Advisory Committee had similar concerns, as you can imagine, with respect to accessibility, parking, and they also raised the question around the broader environmental impacts of these devices. The Acpd had the opportunity to refine and clarify their concerns, as outlined by James Kemp, and those mainly pertain to matters of safety and impacts to persons with vision challenges. Other focus groups, including the cycling community, were generally supportive of e-scooters, but raised questions such as equity. And finally, the downtown BIA was also consulted and were generally supportive, but shared concerns of other groups, especially where sidewalk maintenance and safety was concerned. In response to the consultations and continued learnings from other cities, several changes were made to the report and the operational framework and the RFP terms of reference. Just very briefly, these included changing from what was essentially a permanent program to a pilot program and opting for a 24-month pilot with options for 1-year renewals. We also reduced the terms of the RFP to seek 2 operators instead of 3, really to just kind of allow us to better manage fewer operators. We reduced the number of e-scooters in the core service area to 350 per operator. And the purpose of this was again to adopt a little bit of more of a cautious approach and have and manage them well. That said, operators under the RFP would be allowed to expand to other areas to increase the coverage of the overall program. We introduced 2 new fees and streamlined the fee structure a little bit. Those fees relate to adding an equity fee that was in direct response to our consultations about the targeted market that might exist for e-scooters, and we want to also promote other options for people that might not be able to use e-scooters but might benefit from investments in other micromobility options. We added strengthened and clarified requirements for parking, and in particular the idea that these scooters would be what's called lock to, so they have to lock to a piece of infrastructure such as bicycle parking, and that is managed by the operators to ensure that takes place. And finally, we clarified the requirement for scooters to have a sound signaling device. So in summary, we've made very deliberate refinements to address concerns raised, and we believe that if approved, this report will result in Hamilton having one of the most novel approaches to e-scooters in Canada, and one that leads in terms of best practices. And together with Program Manager Peter Topolovic, we'd be pleased to answer any questions that the committee has on the report or its recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. See where I am here. May I please have a mover and seconder to put this report on the floor? Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Farr. Thank you. And is there any discussion about this? I see the speakers list here. Councillor Jackson, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Chair Vanderbeek, and to a few of my committee colleagues back in May who were just darting to get to the finish line to have this whole package approved 3 months ago. Isn't it sometimes well that good things take time? And the last 3 months we've had additional ample consultation with members of our community that spoke up and said, please don't forget us. We have some great ideas. Acpd, CNIB, SAC, SAC, seniors. I'm really, really glad that we took the extra time. And Director Hollingworth, thank you to you and Project Manager Topolovic for being open-minded and taking committee direction to do more consultation in the community. So, and I'm really pleased to see within staff, I wrote down everything that the delegates suggested and what you, Brian, just said, and a quick summary, Chair Vanderbeek, to Director Hollingworth. You said now it's only a 24-month pilot, number one, 350 scooters, other micro-mobility options, must lock 2, a structure, and sound signaling device imperative. Have I captured the changes from May, Brian, correctly from what you just enunciated through you, Chair?
Brian?
Yes, that's the main changes. And to be clear, the lock 2 was part of the previous report. We've just expanded and clarified that.
With the thank you, Director. With the 24-month pilot now, will if we support this today and Council approves it, ratifies it Friday, will the 24-month pilot, will the yearly renewals, will that be just a fait accompli? Or if there's some issues in the next 24 months, will the committee and council, I guess of the next term, whoever's here, have the ability to challenge that if necessary before automatic renewals? Through you, Chair Vanderbeek.
Brian?
Yes, through the chair, and Peter can add, but essentially there is that checkpoint where if this isn't going as planned, and we will be monitoring it very closely, we have the option of just stopping. So it's at our discretion to and committee and council's discretion whether to exercise those additional 1-year renewals.
Thanks, Director. And Chair Vanderbeek, I wrote down 3 recommendations. I took them not as insistence by Representative James Kemp of Acpd, but I took them as a strong recommendation both now or for the future. And I want your quick comment back, please, Brian. Number 1, appealing to the Highway Traffic Act, the province, for mandatory helmet use. Number 2, city hospital data if there are any injuries due to these scooters. And 3, painting of large signs, eventual urban braille. Thoughts on the 3 recommendations from James, through you, Chair?
Brian?
Certainly, and I would like Peter to also answer this question, but
that's fine. Sure.
Just briefly, yes, I think the operators do themselves promote the use of helmets for safety, but it may be worthwhile writing the province to ask their consideration and opinion on that, though we do have to abide by the provincial regulations. In terms of the hospital data, Calgary did get a lot of data from their hospitals on things like the condition of the person who was injured, their status, etc. So I think that would be worthwhile if we have access to that data, and we will certainly ask. And painting of the pathways, that is something that we would work with Mike Field's group on, and also landscape services. And I think it's a very good idea, especially just to try it out and see what impacts it has, and appreciate the suggestion from James Kemp. And Peter,
well, Chair, sorry, please, Peter. Yes, Peter, with all his knowledge. Thank you, Director.
Or correct me. He is the expert.
Peter?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, on the helmet piece, I don't think there is a need for us to lobby the government. That is part of the 5-year pilot. I will say that in most where you have most successful systems, both in bike share, e-bikes, and e-scooters, helmets are mandated only for those under 18. They aren't as practical and have shown not to be as practical in those over 18 for shared systems. But I think that's going to work it's like that's being evaluated as part of the pilot already, and all municipal practitioners and the communities will be involved in feedback on the pilot. Yeah, I think on that one, that's really built into the pilot already. On the second item, if I know that in some jurisdictions, not all collision data is reported by vehicle type when it comes to e-scooters. So we would have to make sure we work with various groups, including the police, to make sure that they record the incident as an e-scooter incident. And I'm not exactly sure how that mechanism takes place. So we can go and do that research though, and I think that's prudent.
Okay. And the painting, I take it the painting would be an automatic project manager for you, Topolovic, in terms of the pathways and that?
That's correct.
Okay. Chair Vanderbeek, I'll wrap up real fast. I've, in the last 3 months, with all this additional information, supportive commentary from our advisory groups, which I think we take very seriously in the community, many of which we appoint. I've had a conversion on the road to Damascus today. I'm prepared to support this report that's been revised by staff, taking in the input from the community groups and our citizens. My intuition told me Councillor Farr and Nan may have wanted to formalize some of Mr. Kemp's 3 suggestions, but if they're all on the radar, from what I've heard from Director Hollingworth and Manager Topolovic, and answering my questions, if they're built in to this report going forward and won't be forgotten, I'll be satisfied with that, and the minutes will capture that. Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek, and overall well done, and good things take time. Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you, Councillor. And the next speaker on the list is Councillor Farr.
Such a tough act to follow, but I will quote the good Ward 6 representative, additional ample conversation, end quote. And he didn't say, I told you so, but it felt like the ramblings of an I told you so beginning. And otherwise, perfect commentary, and I'm fine with the suggestion that Councillor Jackson has just mentioned at the end, that we just do our due diligence, and he's satisfied with the comments he heard from Peter. I'm glad to hear that he's on the road to Damascus, quote unquote, again. And I was happy that not only is he convincing today, but he was on May the 3rd, moved by Jackson and seconded by Farr, that this report, which will hopefully unanimously approved today, be deferred to provide for additional public consultation with, but not be limited to. And then Councillor Jackson in his motion mentions the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities, the CNIB, the Seniors Advisory Committee, and the Hamilton Cycling Committee. So I seconded that. That's on the record from some minutes from May the 3rd, 2021. And it was convincing then, because I certainly went into the May 3rd meeting giddy and ready to go. I very much believe in this. But on the same token, I appreciate that we took a breath, took a step back, because it's even better now. So I'm still very happy to have my name on as a seconder to move this. And big thanks again. The only item that is outstanding for me, since Councillor Jackson covered the other stuff, is, if I may, through you to Peter or Brian or both, I did suggest that we could amend and put in this motion, just for the record more than anything, because I know if I gave direction, you would do it anyway, but I'd love to get it on the record, and as part of this motion, that we can commit to quarterly meetings with the Acpd. So through you, Peter, how's your schedule? Do you visit them anyway, quarterly? And if so, is this something you can provide regular updates on, as requested by our friends in the engagement world?
Peter?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are starting to meet more regularly, so I think quarterly is definitely doable, especially that we have a few items to be discussing with ACDP, not just about e-scooters. So being able to take all those in as a package quarterly would be a good opportunity for us.
Madam Chair, I'll do that real quick as a friendly. Again, just to get it on the record, it was a request, and I know Peter would do that, and we don't need to. We can just give direction, but I would like to, for symbolic purposes, formalize this because it really couldn't have landed better in terms of where we were the third, where we are now. So I don't have a seconder for that, but if I could do that, that would be great.
Okay, just checking for a seconder. Councillor Jackson, was that you seconding it? It was. Okie doke. Thank you. All right. And could you put that back up for one more minute, Madam Clerk? Okay, so here's the amendment to the motion on the report. Staff be directed to consult with the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities on a quarterly basis with respect to the commercial e-scooter pilot program.
I'm not sure how the clerk did that so quickly. It must be some kind of magic trick, but that's absolutely perfect. And I think my seconder has a comment to it, but that's perfect. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Just a picture of efficiency. That's our clerk's department. Councillor Jackson, did you have something you wanted to say to that?
Madam Chair, only because they delegated on May 3rd and SAC sent in comments and CNIB delegated. Could we just capture all three of them, please, Councillor Farr? Just include CNIB and SAC as well. And I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so any discussion on this amendment? Oh, so it will be on the screen momentarily. The vote will be on the screen momentarily. It is up.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Okay, thank you. And that was the amendment. And so I still have Councillor Nan on the speakers list for the report.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. All the comments that I was going to be made have been aptly covered by Councillor Jackson, and as such, also happy to step down and let him move the motion as amended as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And so just to be clear, you're stepping down from moving the motion, the motion of the report, Councillor Nan?
Yep, I am suggesting that just given the legacy of the commentary, although as a committee we did support the sage advice of pausing, and I'm recognizing that there is a will and desire to continue that legacy of leadership. So I'm happy to step down as the mover. Thank you.
And so now my question is, who's moving it? Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Jackson, or the other way around?
Madam Chair, sincerely, I love the humility and humbleness of the Ward 2 and Ward 3 councillors, but they were the ones who wanted to get moving on this additional mobility device for our community. I'm happy to support it today. Let them both move and second it, please. Thank you.
Okay, we're back to okay, so we're back to moved by Councillor Nan and seconded by Councillor Jason Farr. The report recommendations as amended. The vote is on your screen. And if our clerk can keep up with this, she's exemplary.
Through you, Madam Clerk, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, everyone. Item 10.2, protected bike lane curbs, which is a report from the Hamilton Cycling Committee. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the following: that the Hamilton Cycling Committee Citizen Committee report respecting protected bike lane curbs be referred to the appropriate staff for a report back to the Public Works Committee. And I need to be able to see you, so give me 1 minute. Mover is Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Danko. Thank you. Any discussion on this? I don't see any. And so the vote will be on the screen in a minute.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. We do have Councillor Danko on the speakers list.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see that. Oh, there it is. It just popped up. Councillor Danko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and no problem referring this to staff for their review. But I just wanted to point out to committee that precast concrete curbs are standardized. There's an Ontario provincial standard for this that has a minimum height of 150 millimeters and a maximum height of 190 millimeters. So the request for a 250 mil precast curb is likely not possible. And similar with the request to paint the curbs different colors. Again, roadway markings are standardized, and it's likely there's a way to paint them to make them more visible, but it's going to be, have to be done in compliance with roadside safety standards. So happy to send this off to staff to review, but I think it probably needs a bit of a broader look in ways of separating bike lanes from the traveled section of the roadway that's beyond just the height of the curb and the color of the curb. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion on this? Okay, the vote will be on the screen. And
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 10.3, Biosolids Management Project, approval of change in control of Hamilton City Solutions, PW report number PW 11098H, like Hamilton. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Moved by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion respecting item 10.3? Seeing none, the vote will be on the screen. And it is up.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 10.4, standardization of Hamilton Water equipment, parts, supplies, and services. It's report PW 21045. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by, shall I pick? Councillor Danko. Thank you. And any discussion on this? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you, I guess, to Andrew. Andrew, it's $5 million you're asking us to spend. I know this has been coming back to us every year for as long as I've been around, but it's $5 million this year if you take the grand total of the three appendices. Is this higher than normal, or is this pretty typical?
Andrew.
Through the chair, Andrew Geist, Director of Hamilton Water. You were right, Councillor, this year is looking to be a little bit higher than we see in the average year, but it is certainly not out of the ordinary. The yearly spend does fluctuate. We have a number of vendors on this list. We may not use them all in any given year, but we need to retain that flexibility should we have a failure. So although this is slightly higher than a normal year, it is certainly not an order of magnitude larger.
And Andrew, my last question is, how do you procure this? If you're buying, if you're pre-selecting these vendors on $5 million, how do you know you're not paying a big premium when it's not put through a competitive process?
So through the chair, we do procure all of our services through competitive procurement. Originally, when we do our construction, this is for the minor maintenance, any replacement parts associated with that equipment. So we do look at other options that are available to us. In certain instances, we may change out equipment should we see prices that are not suitable or are not in our favor. But generally speaking, we find that the costs associated with these spare parts and the deals that we receive on them for having them in place far outweigh us replacing the entire asset.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any further speakers, so we will need a electronic vote on this. Vote is on your screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 10.5, cost recovery using funding methodology for municipal infrastructure extensions. Rymel Road from approximately 200 meters east of 2nd Road West to Upper Centennial Parkway, report PW 21046. May I please have a mover and seconder to put that report on the floor? I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Marula. Thank you. Any discussion respecting item 10.5? I don't see any, so the vote will be on your screen momentarily. And it
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Pearson, please. And that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you. And we're on item 10.6, which is the private tree giveaway. Report PW 21044. May I please have a mover and seconder to put that report on the floor? Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Ferguson, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. If Sam's here, this is a great program. Now, $65,000, I don't know how far that goes. I see your staff out putting trees on private property, and they do an amazing job. They got a big auger that augers the hole and they place the tree. Then once a week, you see a couple of people come around with a big tank and fill the green bag up with water to make sure that they survive. So with $65,000, Sam, how many trees does that buy, and how do you decide who gets one and who doesn't?
Sam?
Sam Scarlett, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture, through the Chair to Councillor Ferguson. The ask of the $45,000 will procure approximately 3,000 trees from 2022 going forward. We're able to procure that because we purchase a smaller native tree. We procure these on an annualized basis, so we are subject to price fluctuations. We do have to go with the lowest bid that meets our specifications for those species of trees. So we anticipate from the programs that we've run this year and the ward specific programs, we've estimated that the 3,000 annualized number will meet demand that we've seen to date. So we haven't anticipated a ranking system, but I would imagine it would be a first and first served basis if we were to exceed that 3,000 trees citywide.
Okay, great program, Sam. What caliber tree are they? The ones I see going up in my area are pretty nice. They're about 8 feet tall. Is that typically what you do, or is there a smaller caliber with this program?
So
Sam?
through the Chair to Councillor Ferguson again, the trees that you're referring to are the citywide Free Street Tree program, which are planted in municipal road allowance. And they're generally a 2-inch or a 50 mil caliper at the base of those trees. The trees that we're referring to in the report that's tabled today are going to be what we call a 2-gallon potted tree. And depending on the species, they will range from anywhere from 2 feet high to maybe 4 feet high, or just over a meter, depending on the species that we choose. And that will change from year to year to ensure species diversity amongst those trees that are given out.
And on those trees for private property, are they planted by the homeowner?
Through the chair, the intention from this program is, yes, these trees will be planted and cared for by the homeowner, and they're to be planted on private property in the rear of people's property or in their side yards. They'll also come attached with some guidance on how far to set back from a building, how far to set back from a neighbour's fence, and also how to plant and care for those trees.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. And the next speaker on my list is Councillor Jackson.
Chair Vanderbeek, I just want to offer compliments on two fronts. Number one, I believe that Ward 5 Councillor Chad Collins was the pioneer of this program in terms of during the COVID period of last year. I believe he was record show first out of the gate, requesting Forestry Department to look at implementing private tree giveaway program, obviously for his Ward 5 and possibly for looking at it eventually citywide. So I want to give kudos to Councillor Collins for getting the wheels in motion here. And secondly, to Forestry Manager Scarlett. Sam, you and I have chatted over the last 6 months and the popularity of this program, and you and your wonderful team in forestry must absolutely just be delighted with the responsiveness from citizens across our city. I can tell you the dozen or so that have already gone out in Ward 6, as word is spreading now with the approval of the recommendation from my ward a couple of months ago through this committee, and now will be citywide if this is approved. But I can tell you the interest from the residents, the constituents, homeowners who just care about nature and want to enhance the natural landscape of their properties, and possibly just simply couldn't afford or felt that within the taxes they pay to our beloved city, that this was one benefit that they could receive from their municipal government. So I just want to commend you, Manager Scarlett. You took it seriously under advisement to see what you could do to implement a citywide program. And I think the popularity of this will just increase as more and more of our residents would love to have trees planted, both either on their front or backyards. And it enhances, of course, the value of property. It enhances the aesthetics of the property, and of course helps to enhance the natural environment as well. So Sam, I am so strongly supportive of this and can't thank you enough for bringing the report forward. Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And the last speaker I have on the list is Councillor Danko.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good. Just happy to see this extended citywide.
Thank you, sir. And so we will need an electronic. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Pearson.
My apologies, Madam Chair. You didn't miss me. I just jumped in the last minute. I did want to ask Sam a question. So if I could, Sam, are there going to be guidelines for, I appreciate, and I think it's a great idea, assisting residents who want trees on private property, but will there be guidelines and listings that, similar to our city trees, you shouldn't be topping them, you shouldn't be, all the good things that a number of residents in my ward try and do on our boulevard trees, that people who are asking for these trees on their private property will also respect and care for those trees accordingly?
Sam?
Through the chair to Councillor Pearson, so we don't have that guidance as part of the handout on how to prune and to shape those trees. We will leave that up to the residents. I will take that under advisement. It's information that we can put on our website that we can reference residents to on how to, the basics of tree care and those types of those things. We do. We have taken into consideration these trees will grow, and we want the right tree in the right place. So that's we take that into consideration of the species we're selecting, and we will also always give a range of a small tree, a medium tree, and a larger tree, and we will always answer any questions residents have when they selecting those trees as well. And now that if this is approved, we will be able to put some information on the website around placement and care and those types of things.
I really appreciate that. I think it would be prudent so that people understand and they have somewhere to go to get that guidance. because it is amazing that people don't realize you start topping a tree. If you know, and I'm sure my colleagues know, I've dealt with a number of trees on our city boulevards from residents who don't want them to grow, and it does hinder the health of that tree going forward. So whatever we can do to continue to educate residents, and certainly appreciate that they take pride in what they've asked for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I see no further speakers, so the vote is on the screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting for a vote for Councillor Marula, please.
He seems to be having internet problems here. I'm looking at his, oh, it's disappeared.
So at this point, I'm going to be marking him as absent from this vote.
Okay.
And that vote carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. And now we're moving to item 11, motions. The first motion is 11.1, installation of traffic calming measures at various locations within throughout Ward 6. Councillor Jackson, please introduce your revised motion.
Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek. Moved by myself, seconded by the always hardworking councillor from Ward 5, Chad Collins. Installation of traffic calming measures at various locations in Ward 6. Whereas the residents of Beacon Avenue have submitted a petition with 46 names for installation of speed cushions on Beacon Avenue to address roadway safety concerns as a result of speeding and cut-through traffic. Whereas the residents of Moxley Drive have submitted a petition with 45 names for the installation of speed cushions on Moxley Drive between Beacon and Mohawk to address the same concerns. Whereas residents of Rapallo Drive that were part of a neighborhood petition of 67 names are requesting the installation of speed cushions along Rapallo Drive for the same reasons. Whereas the residents of East 45th have submitted a petition containing 50 signatures for the installation of speed cushions on East 45th between 10th Avenue and Fennel, addressing same concerns. Whereas the residents of Oregon Crescent have submitted a petition containing 45 names for the installation of speed cushions on Oregon Crescent to address similar concerns. Whereas the residents of Eaglewood Drive have submitted a petition containing 75 signatures for the installation of speed cushions on Eaglewood Drive between Eva and Sanina Avenue. And lastly, whereas the residents of Fernwood Crescent have submitted a petition containing 31 names for the installation of speed cushions on Fernwood Crescent between 9th and Castlefield Drive, all the same reasons of traffic safety and cut through traffic. Therefore be resolved, Chair Vanderbeek, that transportation operation maintenance staff be authorized directed to install all these traffic calming measures on the following roadways as part of the fall 2021 program: Beacon Avenue 2 of the speed cushions, Moxley Drive 1, Rapallo Avenue 2, East 45th 5 speed cushions, Oregon Crescent 4, Eaglewood Drive 3, Fernwood Crescent 2. All associated costs be from my ward budget and through the Ward 6 minor maintenance account listed there. Total cost not to exceed $133,000. And C, the mayor and city clerk authorized directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents as satisfactory to city solicitor Spracklin. And Madam Chair, as always, I want to give credit and thanks to the new acting superintendent of traffic, Ryan Krantz, acting director Mike Field, and of course our wonderful legislative coordinator Alicia Davenport for all their assistance. And lastly, I must read out the petition organizers' names. I know Chair Vanderbeek, this committee has seen me the last couple of years, this term of council, bring a number of these motions forward. I can tell you they're not top down, they're bottom up, grassroots driven, engaged community, neighborhoods, and it always takes leadership from a voluntary standpoint. So for Beacon and Moxley Drive, speed cushions, I need to thank Amanda Perino. For Rapallo Drive, Carol Agnew. For East 45th, Debbie Mitchell. Oregon Crescent, Cindy Jordash. Eaglewood Drive, Michelle Baker and Tara Jordan. And Fernwood Crescent, Linda Nickel. Seconded by Councillor Collins. Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you. Any discussion respecting 11.1? Okay, and the vote will be on the screen. It's up.
Through you, Madam Chair, just checking to find out whether Councillor Marula is able to hear me and place a vote. I know he indicated he's having technical issues. Not hearing a response, I'll be marking him
there he is.
I'm back. Hello, I'm back.
Hi, Counselor. If you could just let me know how you'll be voting on this item. It's item 11.1.
Yeah, I'm in support. I've been working hard trying to get back online, but I'm online. I'm in support.
Excellent. Thank you. That vote carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. And item 11.3, addition for the study of design improvements to Southern Park, Hamilton, Ward 8. Councillor Danko,
Through
please
you,
introduce
Madam
your motion.
Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. We've just skipped over 11.2.
Oh, I did? Oh, excuse me. You're right, I did. 11.1, sorry, just let me make sure I know what I'm doing here. Yes, 11.1. I'm sorry, Councillor Jackson. I almost missed your motion. Please introduce your motion with regard to traffic calming on Bellagio, Showcase Drive, Keystone Crescent, Fletcher Road, Gatestone Drive, to address safety concerns around area elementary schools.
Chair Vanderbeek, thank you. And thank you, committee, for the last support, a unanimous support. This is on behalf of the Ward 9 Councillor Brad Clark, who's not a voting member of Public Works. And Councillor Clark has brought to Traffic Department's attention some issues and concerns within a specific neighborhood. And he's asked me to move, which I'm happy to move today, his motion, seconded by, again, the hardworking councillor from Ward 5, Chad Collins. I don't know how he does it. Installation of traffic calming measures on Bellagio, Showcase Drive, Keystone Crescent, Fletcher Road, Gatestone Drive to address safety concerns around schools, whereas the City of Hamilton is committed to the safety of all road users and a leader in the Vision Zero initiatives, whereas the Ward 9 office has continued to receive complaints and concerns related to the safety of elementary students accessing schools in these areas. Therefore, be resolved that transportation operations maintenance staff be authorized directed to install traffic calming measures on the following roadways as part of the 2021 fall program at a cost not to exceed $60,000 to be funded from his Ward 9 minor maintenance account number listed. Number 1, Gatestone Drive from Foxtrot Drive to Shady Glen, 2 speed cushions. Bellagio Avenue from Fletcher Road to Keystone Crescent, 3 speed cushions. Keystone Crescent from Bellagio to Showcase Drive, 2 speed cushions. Showcase Drive from Keystone to Fletcher, 2 speed cushions. Fletcher Road to Pine Hill Drive, northwest corners, some additional corner radius reduction for better sightline clearance, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized, directed to execute any of the required agreements and ancillary documents satisfactory to city solicitor Spracklin. Moved by myself, seconded by Ward 5 Councillor Chad Collins on behalf of Councillor Clark. Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you. And since Councillor Clark is here, I'm going to recognize him. I assume that he would like to have a few words. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. I know it's been a long day for you. I want to thank Councillor Jackson and Councillor Collins for sponsoring the motion here. I was working with Dave Ferguson prior to him leaving us for the grand city of Brantford. And these were recommendations that he came up with after meeting with staff, residents, school board officials, and the motion really speaks for itself. We're trying to expedite it as quickly as possible prior to getting, I guess, getting the kids back into school. So that's the importance of this motion. I really hope that council committee members will support it. Thank you again, Councillor Jackson, for your assistance on the file.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? I don't see any, so we'll wait for the vote. It's on the screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Marula. I do see his thumb, so I will. And that vote carries 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 11.3 again. Additional funding for the study of design improvements to Southern Park in Ward 8. Councillor Danko, please introduce your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for whichever hardworking councillor would like to second this for me. You get a volunteer
Councillor
counselor,
Jackson.
the hardworking counselor from Ward 6, Councillor Jackson, thank you. Whereas parks play an important role in the creation of livable cities and the amenities in parks animate the spaces for use by the public, whereas Southam Park, located at 480 Upper James Street, was approved as a project through the 2020 capital budget process to design improvements to the park, and whereas additional funds are required to complete studies and the detailed design, therefore be it resolved that $51,000 of the funding be allocated from the Ward 8 Special Capital Investment Reserve to complete the studies and detailed design of Southam Park, and that all the authorized documents as per the city clerk and the city solicitor. And just real quick for committee, Southam Park, which is at the top of the Keddy Trail, which is seeing a whole ton of new use thanks to the great pathway. It's right at the end of Upper James. This park is currently undergoing a master plan, and because of the interest in the area and the studies that are ongoing, staff just need a little bit extra funding to finish off that master plan. So this is what that is for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on item 11.3? I don't see any, so the vote will be on your screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Ferguson, please. Received, thank you. That vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Terrific. Item 11.4 is the installation of traffic calming measures at various locations throughout Ward 1. Councillor Nan, I believe you're bringing this forward for Councillor Wilson. Is Councillor Wilson on the meeting? Can anyone tell me? I don't see her.
I'm not sure that she was able to make today's meeting.
That's fine. I'm sure you'll do a noble job.
Thanks
May
for
I-
the vote of conference. Moved by myself and seconded by also a hardworking counselor, Councillor Danko. Installation of traffic calming measures at various locations throughout Ward 1, whereas the City of Hamilton has adopted Vision Zero approach, which considers human error as part of the roadway safety equation, and whereas roads adjacent to parks and schools frequently see the greatest number of young pedestrians and cyclists at risk by speeding motorists, and whereas Ward 1 residents have repeatedly advocated for the installation of speed cushions on various roadways throughout their neighborhoods to address roadway safety concerns as a result of speeding and cut-through traffic. Therefore, be it resolved that A, the transportation operations and maintenance staff be authorized and directed to install traffic calming measures on the following roadways as part of the 2021 traffic calming program. 1, Homewood Avenue from Dundurn Street South to McDonald Avenue, Hamilton, 1 speed cushion. 2, Stanley Avenue from Dundurn Street South to McDonald Avenue, Hamilton, 1 speed cushion. 3, Charlton Avenue west from Locke Street South to Dundurn Street South, Hamilton, 2 speed cushions. 4, Bideau Drive from Studholme Road to Southerly End in Hamilton, 3 speed cushions. 5, Dromore Crescent from Marion Avenue North to Oak Knoll Drive in Hamilton, 1 speed cushion. 6, Marion Avenue North to Haddon Avenue North to Dromore Crescent, 1 speed cushion. 7, Parkside Drive from Devon Place to Glen Road, 1 speed cushion. 8, Glen Road from Parkside Drive to Kipling Road, 1 speed cushion. 9, Strathcona Avenue North from York Boulevard to Florence Street, 1 speed cushion. 10, Chatham Street from Locke Street South to Durham Street South, 2 speed cushions. And B, that all costs associated with the installation of traffic calming measures at the identified locations throughout Ward 1 be funded from the Ward 1 Reserve Account 108051 at the cost not to exceed $100,000, including contingency, and C, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form that is satisfactory to the city solicitor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, the vote will be on your screen momentarily. And it's
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And item 11.5 is Award 1 Park Improvements. Again, this would be for Councillor Wilson. Councillor Nan, please introduce your motion.
Again, in sponsorship of the Ward 1 councillors motion, it's item 11.5, moved by myself and seconded by hardworking Councillor Maria Pearson, Ward 1 Park Improvements. Whereas Victoria Park, 500 King Street, West Hamilton, is a diverse community park in Ward 1 with recreation amenities that promote healthy activity opportunities for the community. And whereas one of the 2 multi-use courts within Victoria Park does not include a basketball and the basketball and hockey infrastructure that is now standard with all new multi-use court amenities. And whereas the addition of this infrastructure is desirable to increasing recreation activities for residents at Victoria Park, and whereas the junior play structure located within Mapleside Park at 12 Spruce Side Avenue, Hamilton, has reached end of life, and whereas the asphalt pathway at both Mapleside Park and Radial Park, 12 Spruce Side Avenue, Hamilton, require replacement, and whereas drainage improvements can be effectively added to Mapleside Park during the play structure and pathway improvements to improve park conditions, and whereas these community amenities at both Mapleside Park and Radial Park are valuable recreation opportunities for children, youth, and families within the Kirkendale North and Kirkendale South neighborhoods, whereas park pathways offer a valuable active transportation link to pedestrians and bike users in Ward 1 and beyond, and whereas the asphalt pathway at Alexander Park at 201 Whitney Avenue and Churchill Park 255 Glen Road and Jackson Playground 439 Jackson Street West require replacement. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that $35,000 of funding be allocated from the Ward 1 Special Capital Reinvestment Discretionary Fund to improve the existing court within Victoria Park, Hamilton, with basketball posts, nets, and fencing improvements to include built-in hockey nets be approved, and B, that the replacement of the existing junior play structure pathway replacements and drainage improvements at Radial Park and Spruceside Park, Hamilton, at the approximate cost of $146,000 be funded by the Ward 1 Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve account be approved, and C, that the replacement of the portion of asphalt pathway in Alexander Park, Churchill Park, and Jackson Playground at the approximate cost of $90,000 be funded from the Ward 1 Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve account be approved, and that D, the mayor and the city solicitor be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions that are satisfactory to the city solicitor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on item 11.5? So it's moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pearson. The vote is on your screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. 12 is notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion today? Seeing none, we'll move on to 13, which is general information and other business. 13.1 is amendments to the outstanding business list. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments to that outstanding business list? Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Barr. Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the outstanding business list items? The vote is on your screen.
Through you, Madam Chair, that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you. And would you want to ask if there are any other items of general information or other business today? I don't see anyone waving at me, so we will move on. We do have a private and confidential item. Just a minute here till I figure out what I'm doing. May I have a mover and seconder to move into closed session respecting item 14.1 pursuant to section 9.1 subsections J and K of the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 and section 239 2, subsections J and K of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 is amended as the subject matters pertain to a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value of potential monetary value, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or the local board. We will require an electronic vote. Please indicate your vote to move in camera.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just need a mover and a seconder, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a mover and a seconder to move in camera. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Ferguson.
Through you, Madam Chair, just waiting for a vote from Councillors Ferguson and Marula, please. Thank you, Councillor Marula. I see your vote. Just waiting on Councillor Ferguson now. Received. Thank you. That vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you. Members of the public are advised that during the closed session portion of the meeting, the live stream will broadcast a closed session is in progress screen. The broadcast will resume when the closed session is complete. Committee will wait up to 5 minutes upon reconvening in open session before proceeding with the meeting to provide members of the public and the media time to return. I would now ask that all members of the public and staff that are not directly related to item 4.1 please exit the WebEx meeting. Thank you. As well, a reminder to all members of the committee to please ensure you move into the closed session portion of eScribe. Okay, we are back in open session. It's the Public Works Committee meeting of August the 11th, 2021, and we are dealing with item 14.1, which was the Material Recycling Facility Unsolicited Proposal, report PW 21050. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the following. A, that the direction provided to staff in closed session respecting report PW 21050 Material Recycling Facility Unsolicited Proposal be approved, and B, that the report PW 21050 respecting the Material Recycling Facility Unsolicited Proposal remain confidential. We will require an electronic vote, and it should be on the screen soon.
3, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. If you could just take a mover and a seconder for me, please.
I just see Councillor Pearson's hand, so she'll be moving it, and seconded by Councillor Danko. And the vote is up.
Three, Madam Chair, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Ferguson, please. Received, thank you, and that vote carries unanimously 9-0.
Thank you. And the last item on the agenda is adjournment. Mover and seconder to adjourn. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Nan. And we will require an electronic vote, so don't go away. It's on your screen. And I will thank you for your participation in today's meeting and thank the staff.
That
excellent, Madam Chair.
Unanimously 9-0.
And legislative assistant, I apologize that I think I called you Angela earlier. Sorry
Madam
about
Chair,
that.
no worries.
Take care. Councillor Jackson caught it for me. Sorry. Bye now.